Super Rugby Pacific Round 6 is coming up this weekend. The team sheets are out today and I have combed through them to find who I think are going to be this round's top scoring picks for Fantasy Super Rugby. Don't forget, in the timeline at the bottom of the video, you can use the chapter select to jump to any position that you are interested in, whether it's the outside backs, the hookers, the locks, whatever. Also on my channel as well, there is a shorts video. It's only 1 minute long. It'll summarize all the picks across all positions. Anyway, we're about to jump right into it, but first let's have a look at the fixtures. I'm really interested in this week is this first game on Friday, Moana Pacifica versus the Chiefs in Pukekohe. I think the Chiefs, there's a real chance they could put a big score on Moana here. I am really valuing their players quite highly this week. The other team I'm looking at is the Endrua. They're playing the Force, one of the weaker teams. It is in Perth though. Can't take it for granted that the draw will blow them off the park there, but there's still a good chance that there will be points scored. One game where I'm actually devaluing the players is the Blues versus the Crusaders. I think this game will be tight. I don't think it'll be high scoring. The Blues, they do have very good defense. Not sure what's going to happen. I'm not saying we're not going to pick players from here, but I am devaluing it slightly. And these other matches, Highlanders versus Reds, that'll be close as well. Still could be a lot of points scored. And Waratahs versus the Brumbies. I'm really liking the Brumbies here, and I think their players will be worth some decent points this week as well. Anyway, on to the players. Starting with the outside backs, my top picks are going to be Amoni Narawa, Leroy Carter, and Logana Masi. Like I said, I'm really favoring these Chiefs players this week. I think they could put a score on Moana, and it's the outside backs who will probably benefit the most. You could go for Stevenson here as well, but I suspect there's a chance that he could get subbed off. Josh Jacob, he is on the bench for the Chiefs. It's quite likely he will come on, and he might replace D-Mac if they want to put D-Mac in some cotton wool if the game's sealed up. But otherwise, D-Mac, he will probably move to fullback and replace Stevenson. So Leroy Carter and Narawa, they're probably going to be the ones on there for the most time with the best chance to rack up the most points. The other one I've gone for is Logana Masi. Like I said before, I do like the Endrua versus the Force. I think there will be a bit of action in that game. I think the Endrua will get a lot of play. And yeah, this year, Logana Masi, he's been the one guy at the Endrua who has really benefited from all of their scoring plays. And they've actually got some of their lesser used players starting in the other back three positions. Droasese has gone to fullback and Rakuro has come on at 11. Logana Masi's actually at 14 this week. Not sure if that'll change things much, but potentially he may get less ball coming to his wing. The points could end up going to Rakuro. You can make your decision about that. Karawa Levu is the guy on the bench. I suspect it's highly likely he will replace Droasese as well. So Rakuro is the only other Endrua player I would really be looking at here. Other than that, options I really like are some of the back three at the Brumbies. Like Tom Wright, we saw he was huge last week against the Endrua. He was full of running. He top scored in the back three for the Brumbies, beating out Corey Toole and Andy Muirhead. Normally Corey Toole is my favorite guy in that back three at the Brumbies, but it's kind of hard to separate them. They spread the points around there. And yeah, Corey Toole, he's still not a bad option as well. So if you're a fan of him, you can pick him against the Tars. He could be the one to get the points. Other options I like as well are the Highlanders. Caleb Tangatau, we saw him last week against the Hurricanes, how good he was. He plays heads up, he comes off his wing, he comes looking for the ball, but not only that, he is looking for opportunities while he is off the ball. We saw him get a huge runaway intercept try last week. It's not the first time it's happened as well. We saw him do it against Moana earlier in the year, and those are worth huge fantasy points. It doesn't say it in the rules, but I believe you get a +5 for an interception. Yeah, you do. You add that on top of the try plus 15, you're probably getting a line break for that as well. So whenever he does that, his score just goes through the roof. And yeah, it's no coincidence that he's getting these intercept tries. This is that sevens background that he has. He's always scanning for opportunities. He's full of confidence at the moment as well, so he's backing himself to go out there and grab them with both hands. Really big fan of this player, and yeah, he's never going to be a bad option. That game with the Highlanders against the Reds, it's going to be tough though, but it's not, you know, they're not necessarily outgunned there, so definitely a live option. And another one is actually Tavatava Nawai. I've talked this guy down most of this year because he's in the midfield, and the way this fantasy competition works, you just get less points while you're in the midfield. These scores, 30 to 40 average, that is not bad, but when we're picking our outside backs, we want to pick those outside backs in the round who are going to get those 60 plus scores, get those massive scores, and it's never going to happen with Tavatava Nawa. You're not going to get that guy in the midfield at the Highlanders just running through teams and getting those tries. But this week he is back on the wing at 11, so whatever action that the Highlanders get out there, whatever space they find out on the left wing, we know he's the type of guy who can capitalize on it. And yeah, he could just go gangbusters out there. But honestly, even though he'll have 11 on his back, I don't think he will stay out there. I will think he'll be coming in off his wing, looking for that ball, looking for those turnovers. So yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work out for him points wise, but it's something you should be aware of, and you can make a decision about that. Otherwise, the other guys, you know, you can look at the guys who are always good. Sevu Reece and Will Jordan. Look, they're playing the Blues this week. They're not going to run in like 20 tries. It's probably not going to be a high scoring game. So I have devalued these guys, but I wouldn't say don't put them in your team. I mean, they are a real option, so you can make that choice as well. If I had to choose, I would choose Sevu Reece, because the wingers, they're the ones who end up getting those plus 15 points for the tries. But Reece, he's not just a winger. He comes off his wing all the time. He's greedy. He goes looking for that action. That's what we want from a fantasy player, and that is why he is the top scorer in fantasy as well, with 300 points for the outside backs. Similarly, Mark Talea, he is a guy who is just starting to find his way to some big points hauls. I do believe the Blues are slowly turning things around, and if the Blues do turn things around, well, Mark Talea, he will be another top tier pick, because he doesn't need a lot of carries. He goes on these runs, he walks into traffic and you think there's no space, and he just comes through on the other side, and he's somehow bounced and slipped and jinked his way through about 5 different guys, and that defender's beaten stats goes up. He gets an offload, you get a line break. So yeah, he's a guy who's still on the radar. I won't be picking him this week, but remember that he's there. And moving on to the midfield, you can see the picks I've made: Josepho Masi and Corey Evans. I'm not married to these picks. It's always kind of tricky picking your midfield. It's not like the outside backs where the options are there's a lot of obvious and strong options. With the midfield, it is a bit tricky. My top 3 are probably going to be Daniel Rona, just being at the Chiefs. He's playing 13 that game up against Moana. Points will be scored. He could be a beneficiary. He's probably going to play the full 80 as well. Tupaia is on the bench, and Gideon Rampling starting at 12. I suspect Tupaia will replace Rampling later in that game. So Rona, he should have a lot of opportunity to get whatever points there are for the Chiefs in the midfield. The other pick I like is Corey Evans, simply because he is listed as a midfielder, but he is starting at fullback, and I actually identified him last week if you watched the best picks video back then, and yeah, he ended up being one of the top scorers for the round, 64 points, second highest for a midfielder. So yeah, it really just shows the power of being in that backfield. And yeah, tough game for the Blues against the Crusaders, but look, that Chiefs game was tough for the Blues as well. So yeah, I think Corey Evans, he could still end up going well this week. And then of course, Len Ikitau got his 3-try haul last week against the Androa. And yeah, it's really hard to ignore him after that. If you look at his other results though, 2 games that was sort of a bust. One versus the Chiefs, that was pretty good. So yeah, I'm not really convinced that Ikitau is going to be the guy, but this week they're up against the Tars. I do favor them a lot in that matchup. And yeah, I think there will be opportunities for Ikitau this week as well. I've chosen not to pick him though. I am not convinced, and I really am just a fan of Josefo Masi. He hasn't been that great this year. He got injured in round 1, barely played in round 2. He's been off since then. Only got 28 points last week against the Brumbies, but that was a tough game. This week they're up against the Force. There should be a lot more play for those Androa backs, and yeah, it's a bit of a last chance saloon for Marcy here for me, but he was just so good last year, and I do believe he's a class player, and he shouldn't get subbed off. So yeah, I'm hoping he'll go well this week. But other options you might want to look at as well. I mean, there is Tanielu Talea. He was huge last week against the Hurricanes, 37 points. And I think that now that Tavatava Nawai's gone out to 11, Talea might actually get a lot more ball this week, because Tavatava Nawai, he never passes the ball. If you watch the Highlanders play, like, you see Talea, he never ever gets the ball from Tavatava Nawai, because Tavatava Nawai, he just hogs it. He always runs with it, he kicks it, he grabs around, he does everything except pass it to Talea. So yeah, with Umaga Jensen in this week, I think Talea will actually get a bit more ball, and yeah, he could be a good option this week as well. And one maybe weird outside pick you could consider is this Chavi Taeli guy. Didn't get a huge score last week, making his debut, but the only reason I'd put him out there is because last week when Plummer went off and Perifetta came on, this guy, he actually took over the goal kicking for the Blues. So I'm thinking with Perifetta starting this week, maybe he'll be the one kicking the conversions, kicking the penalties. So yeah, he sort of gets to double dip on playing in that space in the midfield and also getting some kicks in as well. Not really convinced that it's worth it, but just a interesting thing that you should be aware of and you can make your own judgment on. Moving on to Flyhalf, not a lot to talk about here. DMAC is by far and away just the best at 10 in fantasy Super Rugby. One little caveat this week, because they are up against Moana and he is starting, I do wonder if there's a real chance he might get subbed off early if they do get out to a decent lead, just to protect him a bit, put him in a bit of cotton wool, because he is so important for them. And Josh Jacob, he is on the bench. Like, they could just put Jacob on and replace DMAC, and yeah, I mean, leave Stevenson on at 15. He's no slouch. So yeah, I don't want to scare people off picking DMAC, because even if he gets benched, he's probably still our best fantasy pick. But otherwise, if you are a bit scared, I mean, Tom Liner, he's been pretty good. You can see he's got pretty solid scores in all of his games, even if he isn't blowing people off the park. And yeah, I think that'll be a close game against the Highlanders as well. So there should be goals to kick for him, whether it's conversions or penalties. And the only other one I'll probably look at is Ben Donaldson up against the Ndrua. He's probably going to get more play than you usually do as a force 10 against much stronger teams. So yeah, slim pickings there, but look, just go with DMAC. And 9, and normally this is a lockdown, we just pick Roygaard, but it's really tricky this week because the Canes are on bye, and who do you pick? I mean, look at these 9s, really none of them jump out to me. I'm probably going to favor Ryan Lonergan here. I just like that matchup against the Waratahs. He got that try against the Endrua. He's probably the one with the best chance to get a try this week as well, up against the Tars. Other one I'd look at is Xavier Rowe, just because he's in that Moana matchup. He does tend to get subbed early because on the bench they have Cortez Ratama, but you know, they're up against Moana, so yeah, he is a good chance to get points, but he's also going to take up one of your chief slots as well. Remember, you can only have 4 players per team in a round, so yeah, I probably wouldn't spend one of my chief slots there in halfback. And otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of these halfbacks are quite good, but they don't really get points, so yeah, really, it's just Lonergan for me. I mean, maybe Kuravoli, maybe he'll get some action against the Force, but yeah, I mean, that's tough. Moving on to a more interesting category, the loose forwards, and one of the big movers this week is Hoskins Sotutu. He is back from his 3-week suspension for a high shot. He was an absolute stats machine last year. Great, solid fantasy pick. You could pass him this week. I mean, Blues versus Crusaders, I keep saying this, probably not going to be a lot of play there. But, you know, even in the tight games, these quality back rowers can end up racking up points. So I've got him in here. Other picks I like are obviously Carlo Tizano. Extremely solid player, and yeah, coming up against the Drua, not the toughest opposition they've faced. I mean, he should go well. And of course, Harry Wilson, he's just been a really consistent performer. They're coming up against the Highlanders. It's an away game for the Reds, but yeah, I think that game will be well contested. And we saw last week the Reds against the Endrua, not against the Endrua, against the Waratahs. The Reds, they really do like to lean on their forwards to get the job done, and that's probably what they're going to do against the Highlanders as well. They will not just be carving them up through the back, so Harry Wilson should go well in that environment. Something you need to be aware of though is that we do have a big name returning this week in the form of Rob Valentini, all the way down here at the bottom, first game of the year. And yeah, Valentini, he's an interesting pick for fantasy. He gets through a lot of work, he does a lot of carries, but a lot of what he does is sort of one off the ruck type stuff. Like, he's not necessarily running through people and getting line breaks and offloads and all of that, but because he's so powerful, they do use him as a battering ram when it comes to those close to the line tries, when the forwards, they got the white line fever, they're banging away. He is quite effective in that area as well, so he is definitely a guy to have on your radar and can consider. And of course, the Brumbies, they are up against the Tars. They have that good matchup in their favor, so definitely a good pick there. And the other ones I like as well are Darren Alangi and Thanakai Vada. Darren Alangi is actually playing at 8, and Thanakai Vada is starting at 7, which is interesting to me. Like, Darren Alangi, he has started at 8 a lot this year, but Thanakai Vada, he seems like a natural 8 to me rather than a 7, so not sure what is going on there. This back row for the Endrua is going to be some really big bodies, but yeah, I mean, I've been impressed with both of these guys, and they will have running opportunities against the Force. I think they will both go well. I think if anyone gets benched, it's probably gonna be Thanakai Vada. They have really favored leaving Darren Alangi on every game, so you have to pick one, you might want to lean that way if you do want to endure a player in your back row. I wish Tanaka Vada would play the full 80 though. I feel like he would be the more damaging runner out of the two. Moving on to the locks, not a lot to fuss about here. I'm a really big fan of Tupovai. I think he is probably the best lock in the competition, or at least the most consistent. Up against Moana as well. Real opportunity for him to get some bonus points there. My other option was Tom Hooper, just because I was extremely impressed by him in last week's game against the Enduror. Like, he was carrying so strongly, and the way the Brumbies played, like there's a lot of this sort of short tip pass in between the forwards, and yeah, Tom Hooper, he's often on the end of that, and he was racking up some big runs, and yeah, it was a huge performance from him last week. He is actually a 6 who is listed as a lock, but he starts at 6, and it seems to be that a lot of the good locks in this category are guys who start at 6, guys like Cullen Grace. Cullen Grace is starting this week, but I suspect he will end up getting subbed. Other options I like are Josh Berry. I think he's the best partner for Tuipulotu in the locks. And yeah, like you can see when he actually gets a full game, he's getting great points, like 30 plus. These other 2 games he didn't get over, you know, he's coming off the bench, so he is on a per minute basis quite a valuable lock. Josh Cannon, he's good as well for the Reds. He's had a big couple of games. And Darcy Swain, he's one that started strong for the start of the season. A lot of people were really picking him up, and against the Enduror, he's probably gonna go a bit better this week as well. So those are all the options I would be considering at lock. And when it comes to hookers, my favorite option this week is actually Tavita Akanaveri. I've been a big fan of this guy for a while. He was great last year, but this year he's only had about 1 start. Every other game he's come off the bench. He was so huge off the bench last week though that it looks like they have promoted him back to a start. And yeah, this guy, he's just really strong around the park, good with ball in hand. So yeah, that's what separates him from these other hookers. That's why he's capable of getting those extra points. In that good matchup against the Force, I think he's the best pick this week. Another option to consider is Kurt Eklund. Riccatelli, Mr. Solid, everyone's favorite. He is gone. Kurt Eklund started last week. First time we've seen him start in a while, and he was fantastic. You can see he never missed a line out error. There's no line out error here, no -2 for that. He was perfect, and that's just a really solid base for a good score for a hooker, because not only are you avoiding that -2, but you're getting the +1. So every line out error is actually costing you 3 points. They can add up. So yeah, just having a guy who's super solid is very valuable. And if you want someone solid, that's who I'd go for. Blues like to maul as well. If that ever works out for them, it's the hooker who's going to benefit. It'll be Kurt Eklund this week. That'd be a nice bonus if that happens. That'd probably push him to the top of the hookers. So definitely a live option there. Only other one I'd look at is probably Richard Asiata. Matt Fazler seems to be gone from the 23 for the Reds this week. And honestly, Richie Asiata, even though he comes off the bench a lot, he's probably just as good. He's one of these guys who's actually really good ball in hand, good around the park. And because Fazler's gone, I'm wondering if Asiata will actually get a bit more game time this week, especially if it's a close game. They may just choose to keep him on instead of using their third string hooker. And yeah, the longer the hooker he stays on, you know, the more they get to play, the more line out throws they'll get. So yeah, interesting choice to make there. Definitely not a bad option. And finally, looking at the props, and things are pretty dire, honestly. I keep saying it every week. I'm a really big fan of Angus Bell. Just watching him play. He always carries so powerfully. I feel like at some point he is gonna get a try, and that's gonna push him to the top of the props, so to speak. And yeah, things just look pretty sad. There's no obvious options here. They're all sort of much of a muchness. I've gone with Tom Robertson because these force props have kind of fallen off in the last couple of weeks because they're not getting these scrum points anymore. But yeah, I feel like they might get better play against the Endure. I feel like their scrum might hold up this week. Marley Pearce has actually gone to the bench, so he's not an option for the force this week. You have to go to Robertson. But yeah, the Endure actually starting 2 sort of newbie props this week as well. So yeah, that force scrum should hold up pretty well. And the way the Endure play, throwing the ball around, it can be a lot of knock-ons, it can be a lot of scrums. So yeah, I think that's an opportunity for Robertson to really rack up some of those scrum +3s this week. But it's all much of a muchness here, honestly. I don't know who you should pick, but it doesn't really matter anyway. It's going to be like 10 points difference unless one of them somehow scores a try, and you know, good luck picking that. You can go ahead and pick that if you know. If you know, actually let me know. Last thing to consider is who to captain this week. At the moment I've got Mackenzie selected. I think he is a solid option, although be aware, I think there is a serious chance he could get subbed this week just to protect him if they put the game away. Otherwise, your more risky but probably higher ceiling options are going to be Leroy Carter or Imoni Narawa. I would probably lean towards Carter, but yeah, I mean, couldn't go wrong with either of these. When Chiefs played Moana last year, it was actually the highest scoring game of the season. I think the Chiefs, they put 65 points on Moana, and Narawa, he tore it up that game at 14. He got 3 tries, he got heaps of line breaks. So look, it's a new year, it's a new season, it's going to be a different game, but you know, there is historical evidence to back up Narawa being a good pick here. And this is also a week where you might want to consider using your triple captain as well, or your co-captains if you haven't. I'd be a little bit scared of using it, to be honest, putting it on Mackenzie, but just because of that sub chance. But even if he does get subbed off, he's probably still going to have 1,000,000 points, so still not a bad option. But yeah, I've still got my triple captain. I think I'll hold on to it, but yeah, you can make that decision for yourself. And lastly, I forgot to mention as well, with all of these fixtures, the weather looks good for all of them. 2 games happening in the Auckland region this weekend, and yeah, things look good in Auckland for both of them. Small chance of a shower, but even if it happens, it's going to be negligible. And at the moment, Waratahs v Brumbies in Sydney, that looks pretty good as well. Chance of rain on the Friday, but Saturday looks good. And obviously the weather's good in Perth for the Force as well. It'll be hot, but that won't bother the Endure. Let me know what your thoughts are about this week's picks. Let me know as well if I've missed anything, or if there's something else you would like to know about specifically. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great weekend, enjoy the games, and I'll see you in the next one.